We've got Booth, Joppy's Ice Cream, and public hearing for a gas station, J&H Oil. So if you're here for any one of those, there'll be time during each of those items to take public comment, but this is an opportunity for anything that's over and above that. Anybody from the audience have any comments to offer on non-agenda items? Okay, thank you. We'll move right into the first item on the agenda, case number 20-875. It's a public hearing, preliminary area site plan review for the Waterford Village single-family, multifamily, and commercial development. And we'll turn it over to Planning Director Tricia Anderson to introduce the project.
Thanks, Terry. So here we are again. Third time's a charm, maybe. So for the record, the property address is 3483 and 3485 Lake Michigan Drive Northwest. The size of these lots is 99.59 acres and 5.40 acres. The zoning district is officially RPUD 1, RPUD 2, and CPUD. The future land use designations here are residential growth, 2 to 4 units per acre, residential growth, 4 to 8 units per acre, and mixed use. And we have with us tonight the applicants Rick Kavanaugh, Anthony Rodriguez of Stoneley Companies, and we also have Drew Walker of Kimley Horn. So the last time we were here, the Planning Commission forwarded a favorable recommendation to the City Commission for the rezoning of this property. And so tonight we're here reviewing the preliminary area site plan. A little bit of what I'm going to go through is kind of a repeat of the last two times I did this presentation, but I think it's important for everybody to understand the process and what's being reviewed tonight, and also the changes that have been proposed since the last time you saw this project. So again, the PASP, or the Preliminary Area Site Plan, is a broad review of the entire project. A lot of those nitty-gritty details get looked at and reviewed and dug into later on in the process, called the Final Area Site Plan. And at our last meeting, our last Planning Commission meeting on July 21st, the Planning Commission tabled their action on the PASP to get a little bit more clarity on things like drainage and concerns that with connections, road connections, were they going to connect, are they not going to connect? And so they tabled their actions for the PASP. And so each zoning district, RPUD 1, RPUD 2, and CPUD, they each have their own requirements. So we look at each of those differently with each of the standards from the zoning ordinance when we're reviewing the PASP for each zoning district. So after the Planning Commission met on July 21st, it was recommended or agreed by the Planning Commission that the City Commission and the Planning Commission should have a joint meeting to kind of hash out some of these desired outcomes of the plan. You may remember at the July 21st meeting, our applicant Rick Kavanaugh stood at the podium and said, we'll basically do what you want us to do. We just need to know what you want us to do. And so taking into consideration staff comments, City Commission comments, members of the public comments and concerns, and Planning Commission comments, the outcomes that came out of the August 9th joint meeting was that connections should be made to Maple Row and Coosterer. Connection from Market to Marlboro at Waterford Village Drive should be removed, and Midland Drive should instead connect to Waterford Village Drive. Those are the roads that lead into the multifamily portion of the development where they would meet up with Waterford Village Drive. The FASP review stage, they felt was a reasonable time for the developer to provide a zero impact statement as it pertains to site drainage. And it was also agreed upon that Lincoln Lawns Drive should be aligned with Sunset Hills. And so the revised submittal that we received from the applicant does address all of these recommendations. And so just a summary of the major changes of the plan. The last plan showed a density of 323 units, where in the master plan, significant undeveloped lots section of the master plan only called for a total density of 318 units. So pretty much the whole way up until that last plan, they've kept it under 318, but that was definitely concerning for some of our planning commission members, and so the applicant has addressed that item to reduce the total number of units. I have 316 here. Because the plan says 248, but today the applicant clarified that the multifamily units would be 250. So 250 multifamily units, 68 single-family units, which is a total of 318, which is the maximum for the site. As far as streets and connectivity goes, the plan that the Planning Commission will be reviewing tonight shows the connections to Maple Row and Kusterer, and it shows a removal of the four-way intersection at Marlboro and Market Street, which I described in the last slide. And we also stress to the applicant that recreational amenities, both passive and active, were important for both the multifamily and the single family developments. And so what they did was they added 2 pocket parks to the single family part of the development, and they added some barbecue grilling areas and walking trails throughout the wetland areas around the multifamily. And so I just want to go through these review steps with you again. The steps that have a black check box here, these steps have already been completed. So the rezone, as I mentioned earlier, has already gotten a favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission. And then the City Commission holds 2 readings of the rezone request. They did that on August 9th and on August 23rd, where they have the second reading. And so here we are again considering the PASP at the Planning Commission. So after this happens, most of you are probably aware, if you've been attending some of the other meetings, Planning Commission is aware of this. The single family portion, the developer plans to sell to a local builder or developer to go through the remaining steps to get those lots subdivided. There's a couple different tools that can be used to subdivide property. Usually for single family subdivisions, we see platting or site condo. Depending on which route is taken, there's either going to be like 3 steps that require Planning Commission and City Commission approvals, or there'll be like 5 steps, which requires all sorts of correspondence with other agencies. So that part still has a long ways to go. But the thing we're trying to button down here in our Planning Commission review of the PASP is the number of units and the street layout, and that it can be feasibly served by utilities and stormwater management. The FASP for the multifamily portion of this development needs to come back to the Planning Commission. So if the developer receives an approval tonight, their next step will probably be applying for final area site plan approval. There's a lot more detail that goes into that plan, like landscaping and buffering and all the details of stormwater calculations and, exactly where things are going to go. And then for each commercial outlet that's proposed, there will be an individual final area site plan review by the Planning Commission for each lot. Separate developers usually, and so that's probably a ways out as well. So just an overview of the RPUD1, low density single family residential. The areas that I mentioned where pocket parks were added would be here. If you can see my cursor here, right here where Marlboro meets up with Waterford Village Drive. And then there's another one down here where there are some old growth trees that are worth preserving, and this space will be reserved for a pocket park as well. The CPUD, which is commercial planned unit development, the uses proposed are C1, which is neighborhood commercial, so your small scale neighborhood amenities. And then there's one of the lots allows for office uses. This is an overview of the RPUD2, the multifamily. You can see that this road connection has changed. It used to be connected up here, but now it's connected down here as requested by the Planning Commission and City Commission. So again, I can't stress this enough. These are the items that we're looking at for the PASP review. So we have a zoning ordinance that contains specific criteria. And what we do is we look at each of those criteria and compare it against the plan and determine whether or not those criteria are met. And then the Planning Commission takes our recommendation and they have their deliberation and they make recommendations as well, and then they come to a decision. This particular process has taken almost 2 years. I think it'll be 2 years in November, right? So again, I made this list last time. I'm just going to go through it again. The PASP review has certain items that are locked in if the plan is approved. So this would be the number of units and the density, the general street layout and connections, signage that goes above and beyond what the ordinance allows, off-site improvements, and a development agreement. So off-site improvements would be, in this case, the realignment of Lincoln Lawns, which is being proposed, and then also a signal at their Waterford Village Drive entrance. The zoning districts are locked in, setbacks and maximum building heights, sidewalks and pedestrian pathways, clearing limits and conservation areas, and also recreational amenities. So when we're looking at the PASP, we're also looking at what the master plan calls for in terms of density. And I've already gone through this with you in terms of the density. They've reduced the number of overall units so that they are at 318, even though my thing says 316. And then in the master plan, there's also a corridor design plan. There's certain areas where we'd like to see streets connected for multiple reasons. One of them being health, safety, and welfare, and being able to get emergency vehicles back to neighborhoods. So this plan shows a connection to Maple Row and Cooster. It's also showing connections to Marlboro and Lincoln Lawns Drive. So there's a lot of connectivity with the plan that's been proposed. So again, here is the corridor design plan from our master plan. It shows that a connection would be desirable here at Cooster and at Maple Row. Those are both proposed in this plan. And then here's just kind of like a close-up of this area. So you can see that a connection to Maple Row is proposed. They added a connection to Cooster, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a second. Again, they removed this 4-way and they added a 3-way here. So the recommendation from the City Commission, the joint City Commission and Planning Commission meeting, was to connect Cooster. That's what our corridor design plan shows, and that's what we've kind of been recommending all along. It's my understanding that at the City Commission meeting on August 23rd, there was more discussion about these connections, and from a staff perspective, when we're trying to be realistic about things here, when we look at Cooster from the standpoint of connections and what the existing roadway looks like, this road is narrow with a 20 to 26 foot traveled surface width, depending on where you are on the Cooster, on the road. And it also has drainage ditches. So if the city was going to come in here and not require, but improve the road to include sidewalks and a wider traveled surface width, to accommodate additional traffic movements on this road, that would be a really big endeavor, and a lot of people's front yards would be cut back a lot. Scott's going to dig into that a little bit more than I am, because that's more his bailiwick. But at this point, staff is recommending that that the connection to Cooster be removed from the plan, and I've added that as a condition of approval. But what we have asked, or what we would like to ask for, is for that right-of-way to stay there and be dedicated to the city. In the event there's, by some chance, a connection would need to be made right there in the future. And we would also like to ask the developer to add a pedestrian pathway there, connecting from the sidewalk along, I think it's Lexington, to connect to Cooster. So the folks on Cooster would be able to utilize some of those pedestrian pathways to get over to the Fred Meyer Standale Trail. So more about road connections. I know this tree right here is very near and dear to a lot of people. And, Scott and I have looked at this a number of different ways. If we're requiring the connection to Maple Row, then that likely means that this tree would have to go if the PASP is approved. That being because we would have to obtain right-of-way through a large portion of these backyards here to be able to go around this tree and around as far as the drip line, so that the tree would stay alive with the road around it. Because if you build a road too close to a tree, then you're going to be damaging some roots, and the tree is unlikely to survive that. So I just wanted to put that out there. I personally love this tree, but if that road connection is made, there's a 99.9% chance that the tree would have to go. So more road configuration stuff. There hasn't been any change in this. You probably remember this slide from my last presentation. the alignment of Lincoln Lawns Drive. It's been agreed that this will create a lot more safety with left turn movements out of Sunset Hills and Lincoln Lawns Drive at the same time. There's still a signal that is proposed here, and the applicant would obviously need to work with MDOT in order to make all that stuff happen. This is still proposed as a public road, and Lincoln Lawns Drive would be proposed to be reconfigured into a cul-de-sac. And a lot of driveways would have to be extended here to meet up with their new right-of-way. And I think that instead of changing property lines, the right-of-way would just be extended. So just to add a little bit more about the recreational amenities that are being proposed. Again, the PASP is the time where where these kind of things get locked in. That way, there's no question when somebody else comes in to apply for a final area site plan, hey, this is what was approved at the PASP, so we're expecting you to build these things. So I have made a recommendation for the applicant to add some more specific active recreational amenities for the RPUD2 development. And when I say active recreational opportunities, I'm talking about things like sport courts, basketball courts, tennis courts, a swimming pool, stuff like that. Soccer fields, multi-sport fields. And then in the single family portion of the development, the applicant has provided the pocket parks, which is great, but we need to specify on the plan so that it's locked in that certain structures must be built. And so exactly what that note would look like, hasn't necessarily been crafted yet, but we definitely would like to see something to the effect of play structures will be built, or playground, whatever structures that are planned for that area, so that kids can take advantage of an actual playground rather than just a space of grass called a pocket park. And then last, this has to do with the wetlands. We've asked the applicant for all undisturbed wetlands and open spaces to be identified as being dedicated in conservation or preservation easement. There's a lot more things that come along with conservation easement and being dedicated to the MDNR. But there's also the option for a preservation easement, which is a little bit less work, I guess you could say. But I have a condition to that effect in my recommendation. Here are some images of the multifamily. And so I'm recommending for a third time, even with all of the different changes that we have seen along the way here, and I'm going to modify my recommendation just a little bit, and the motion should be modified to reflect this as well. But I'm recommending that the Planning Commission grant preliminary area site plan approval for the Waterford Village development consisting of 250 multifamily units, 68 single-family units, and 5 commercial outlots, a clubhouse, public and private roads, utilities, and associated amenities located at 3483 and 3485 Lake Michigan Drive, subject to the following conditions. I don't know if you want me to read all these right now. Tyler says no. So when you make the motion, just make sure that you clearly state the conditions as I've recommended them, and any conditions that you wish to add or modify into the motion. So I've got, I think, 11 conditions here, which is kind of a lot for what I'm normally comfortable with, but a lot of this stuff are things that have to be in there. And so that is the extent of my presentation. Hopefully it's the last time I have to give that presentation.
Okay, thank you, Tricia. Commissioners, any comments, questions?
Yeah, Trish, this is Pat. Regarding the Cooster connection and having that closed, Scott, are you going to go into that in a little more detail? You mentioned that. I just wanted to,
I wasn't planning on it, no.
okay.
I'm here to answer questions.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because I know it's a narrow street, but if you look 2 blocks down, you've got Nixon, which connects to Maynard and goes out to Lake Michigan Drive. And Cooster is 20 feet wide at its narrowest point. Nixon is 21 feet at its narrowest point, and Maynard is about 24 feet. So those 2 streets, we deem, connectable between Leonard and Lake Michigan Drive. And yet we say Cooster, which is going to have a lot less traffic on it, is not. So I just wonder why and who made the decision, because I did watch the city commission meeting and I didn't really see confirmed, response to, saw a lot of discussion on it, but I did not see it confirmed until I saw your notes.
So I can say that among staff, Frank and I have talked about this connection at length, and we decided that based on the city commission's position, at this time, getting right of way would be the most appropriate thing to do.
I guess my question is, we had this meeting in here with the city commission and with the planning commission, and to see this show up as a condition with nothing from staff or anybody saying, hey, this is why we changed our mind. We all agreed in here that that kind of activity was a good thing. I didn't hear anybody in the room say no. I'm a little frustrated over that.
Well, I think at this point in time, this is a recommendation from staff, and it's a case where we have the opportunity during the deliberations to decide whether to go with those conditions or modify or add conditions, as the case may be. So, yes, any other questions for Trish on this? Okay. At this point, we'll turn the floor over to City Engineer Scott Connors.
So I think we're going to go from engineering with the less is more approach here. I won't walk you through the whole report, but maybe just a couple of highlights. We essentially took our last report and updated it for changes that have been made to the plan, so that you could see if things had been addressed or if new things had popped up. But one directive that we did receive before we wrote our report was to provide some additional information on connectivity, including some examples. So the first page or so of that report basically just gives you a couple of examples of, as neighborhoods have grown, how we've required connectivity. If you were to get specific, we could probably provide good examples and bad examples throughout the city. And I think that's what happens when you get 27, 28 square miles of areas. We have examples of both, and I'd be glad to get into any of those with you if you like, as you deliberate on the issue of connectivity. Before I go through the points too, I think I didn't write this in here, but it's kind of self-evident. I think the traffic study that was done for this was completed in December of 2020. If this layout gets approved, we're going to require that be adjusted for that layout. And we couldn't, it's a 1,000-page document. We couldn't ask that it be updated with every derivation because it's changed weekly, hourly, daily. So I think what we're looking for is when we figure that layout out, when it moves past PASP, we'll make sure we get that updated traffic impact study, and it'll be a key part of the FASP, the first one that comes along, which we think will be the apartments. So if you work through my report from last time, most of the items have not been addressed. That's not uncommon because we're still looking at a preliminary plan. There's still valid concerns, things to think about. But it's probably not worth noting too many of those. I think when you get to the RPUD 1, there was a comment on sheet 3 about the zero impact and the flood protection. That's obviously still of paramount importance. We're just not there yet. That's what we would ask for after this stage, when the layout's secured, when the number of units is secured, then they can really put some detail into that, and you would not see a single final area site plan without those kinds of details. So that would be coming if this moves forward tonight. Related to the RPUD2, there were a couple changes there that it's probably worth pointing out, and we still debate the issue of setback from the garage to the driving surface in that apartment complex, or the proposed apartment complex. We want to stick to our guns there, that we'd recommend that 25-foot be used as your minimum, so that you can have a vehicle in there. Vehicles these days are as long as 18 to 20 feet. You want to be able to have somebody park in that driveway, walk around the car to get into the building without having to walk out into the street. And I think around the Grand Rapids region, we're starting to see a lot of these developments that are getting squeezed pretty tight. Not so many in Walker. We've been pretty good about it, but we want to, again, point that out. That 25-foot number is pretty important to us in engineering. That doesn't mean that you have to accept it if there's a smaller number that you're comfortable with, but it does have a big impact on the layout. And it also appears that a few units have been pushed closer to the road without a garage parking space, and that requires a little bit more satellite parking, making sure that if their garage space is like in many cases, being used as a storage unit temporarily, that they would have a place to park. They'd have a place for visitors to park. I think that's something that you still really need to take a close look at. So those are really the only new items. And again, if this moves forward, there'll be more detail from the traffic study, and we'll share all 1,000 pages with you if you like, or just a summary, and then more drainage details to follow as well. And if you have questions about the connectivity issues, we're here for that as well.
Thanks, Scott. Commissioners, any comments or questions for Scott? Okay, thanks, Scott. At this point, prior to opening the public hearing, we'll ask the developer to step forward, and you have an opportunity to provide perspective on the project. And please step forward, give your name, address, and thank you.
Rick Kavanaugh, president of Stoneley Companies, developer. Address is Barrington, Illinois. Thank you for having us here. I apologize for being a little rough here. We were out working at the property today, getting ready for the demolition of the building. So we were there till this afternoon. Met the fire chief over there on a couple of final matters that he wanted to do in some training in September at the property. We, received reports yesterday, and I think, as I stated at the prior meeting, tell me what you want and we'll be able to do it. If the connection to Cooster needs to go through, we're happy to build it. If it needs to be a right-of-way, we're happy to provide it. Question comes in is whether it's a dedicated right-of-way now or whether it's a future right-of-way that's a setback, and who maintains that area. Those are questions that would come out of that. We just got that yesterday. With regards to the pocket parks, I guess my only comment is I agree that the pocket park to the north, where we took out the 2 lots up at Marlboro, should be an active recreation. It feeds directly. It's got a lot of sidewalks. The one to the south, I guess I wasn't anticipating that being a pocket park. I think my engineering firm put that on the plans, and we discussed it at one point. But in reality, when you look at how that slope is, I was over there today, and where those trees are and how the lots are going to sit, it's going to be somewhat sloping down towards the backside there. And I'm just not sure that having playground equipment on that site, in addition to having playground, only 10 lots away, that'll be a much more substantial one, is necessarily the proper address for what that open space is. We were trying to do that to preserve some trees and create some, as you drive in, not have, continuous lots. I think, and my proposal would be is that we actually take those lots and split them to the 2 homeowners so they can maintain them versus having it becoming a issue of where that's going to be maintained. So I think the pocket park to the north is one that we can expand on and really create something that becomes a usage. There's very few lots and very few buildings that would access that southern one. I mean, it really services 4 or 5 lots and maybe one of the multifamily buildings across the street if they walked across the street to do that. And I just think that's when they're so close that it's better to focus on the north one. That would be my request. With regards to the other issues on the recommendations, I didn't get to read all 11. Tricia, I had them up. I got through number 8. Generally, we agree. Our engineer has said that we're going to have a zero impact on the site. I believe them. They've done a lot of work on it. It's hard to develop that full drainage report until we know that we have a concept that's going to work. We've have modified this plan 4 or 5 times over the last year and a half, and I think we've gotten one that is the best of all the solutions for everybody, and we're happy with it. We're happy with it goes. With respect to the development agreement and the ordinance, that I think those need to be worked out. I'm not sure if the development agreement happens when we come in for final area site plan, or if that's something that's going to be active between us and the village attorney over the next few weeks. But most of what you've asked for, I mean, from what we see on paper, we're in agreements with. We've developed that together, so I don't have a problem with that. The active amenities scares me when you say soccer fields and ball fields and swimming pools, because that's not in the plan. We have wetlands down in that whole 18 acres on the lower right-hand side. We're going to modify those and clean them up as best we can. We have some detention areas going in there. We're redoing all the storm sewer work to get all that cleaned up all the way down along the way. I don't want that ugly muck-ridden pond that's over there where the 13th green or 14th green was at one point in time. And we want to clean all that up, getting to the point of understanding what we have to go through with the different governmental bodies to get to that, so that it becomes a much more presentable open space. We don't plan on having any recreation or anybody going down there, because that is lowlands. It's got a lot of water running down to that point. So I think when we talk about active recreation in the RPUD2, while the walking paths around the detention ponds will be open, they'll be connected to sidewalks so that people will be able to use that. It's not intended for the public to use that as an active park, because it is part of the multifamily parcel, or would be part of the preservation or conservation easement. That's another thing. If it's easier, preservation easements, we've agreed that that's the case. We want to do it. The steps of going into a conservation easement there's a lot of legal steps to that, and getting DNR to accept that. I don't know what the solution is for that, so we need to come up with a solution that works. And we're more than happy to do that. That's going to stay open space. It's going to be unused. It's going to be nice vistas. It'll be a nice buffer. You won't even barely be able to see the buildings to the north off Lake Michigan through all that open space. So at the end of the day, we want to find the right answer for that. I don't know in a day or two what that answer is from just getting the report. It's a little quick to come up with that, but I do think saying it's going to be one or the other is acceptable to us. So other than that, we're happy to be here. We're happy to get moving. Obviously, we want to move pretty quickly. I think Scott was correct in saying that the first final area site plan will be the multifamily. We're already working on all the details and the drainage, on the update to the traffic study. We have had it updated. It's just we didn't deliver another 1,000-page document. So that should be pretty easy to bring back for the final area site plan and meet Scott's needs, and talk to MDOT, get all that solution worked out. We would like to try to, if possible, we're meeting tomorrow with some site work contractors and with a single family developer to try to work out the details. If we could get in and start doing the road work, the phase 1 will have to be building the spine road up to a point and bringing in the site utilities and doing some of the storm work. I'd love to start that in October if I could. Wintertime, we have to talk about the contractor tomorrow. Wintertime brings into an issue. You still can work somewhat through the winter. You'd have to start the mass excavation sooner. I would like that to be something we could work towards. If we get pushed off 6 or 8 months, get into next season, all of a sudden I can't deliver the apartments in 2022, it's 2023. That is something that my focus would be. We've been at this a long time. If we could try to work really quickly together and get this completed, it would be our goal to get going and start that work that has to be done before we can do the work on the other sites.
Yeah, that item is beyond the scope of what the
I
planning
understand.
commission would address.
I just wanted to let you know our intent to not let any more grass grow in our meadow before we get going on this. So thank you very much. That's all I have. If there's some questions, I'm happy to answer.
Commissioners, any questions, comments for the developer?
Okay.
Thank you very much. At this point, we've advertised this for public hearing. We have a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion by
Support.
Tyler, supported by Pat to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
3 minutes.
Motion carried. So at this point, we'll invite people to come up, allow for up to a 3-minute time period to offer your comments concerning the project. We just ask as you come forward, I think the mic is on right now already. So you just come up, give your name and address, and share your comments, and we'll go from there. If you wish to come up first? Oh, this gentleman.
Good evening. Bill Stellama, 615 Lincoln Lawns Drive. At this point, my biggest concern is with the single-family portion of this project, particularly along Lincoln Lawns and Marlboro. I'd be interested to see what civil engineers come up with for a mitigation of water runoff, because just along Lincoln Lawns, all that land is higher than the street itself. With 11 houses, you're going to have on an average 2,000 square feet of roof per house. You're going to have perhaps 40 by 17 driveway that's 2 cars long and 2 cars wide. And that totals up to over 22,000 square feet of impermeable surface. So how you're going to mitigate that runoff, I'd really be interested, and that'll be the same on Marlboro's too. And runoff has always been an issue in our neighborhood. At the intersection of Lincoln Lawns and Lawns, one of our neighbors, and I believe you guys probably know who he is because he's in the fire department, he has a drain in his backyard, a great big basket drain. And certain times of the year, that basket drain is almost completely submerged. His whole backyard is almost unusable because of the amount of drainage there is in our neighborhood. And so he's at the bottom of that hill. And it's considerable hill when you stand back and look at it. So how that's going to be mitigated, I'm really concerned about, because we already have a lot of water runoff when we have high rain events like we've seen this past year. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Mike McKayan, 601 Lincoln Lawns. I guess the question I got, they're not going to put a light at Lake Michigan Drive and Sunset Hill and then where Lincoln Lawn comes in? It's just going to be a stop sign? That's going to be a fiasco. We ain't going to be able to get out of our street. I mean, you can't hardly get out of our street where it is now. You move it up, you can't see over that hill. It's going to be a cluster. You're never going to get out of there. So that's what I got to say.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jared Van Dopp. I live at 881 Maple Row. First, I just want to say I'm almost a little bit insulted that I only have 3 minutes to talk about something that's going to affect my neighborhood for the rest of my life, because that was my intent when I purchased my house, was that this was going to be my forever home. So I'm going to try to make my comments short, but if I have to go over 3 minutes, please bear with me. So this is just a kind of a very minor note, but because I know the commercial use along Lake Michigan Drive has always been there. But seeing kind of some of the sketches there and the comments, I just want to say let's be really, really careful about that, because we've already got that strip mall in the corner of Lake Michigan Drive in Kinney that is barely full ever, and numerous other buildings up and down Lake Michigan Drive that are constantly rotating with high turnover rates of different businesses. So let's be really, really careful about what we allow to be built there so that we don't just have more vacant buildings. Like I said, we got vacant buildings right there in Standale, which is walkable area. Now we're talking about developing further out where there's going to be less foot traffic. So let's be really careful about that. Most importantly, the density. And I challenged the city commission with this question, posed it as an open-ended question last week when I spoke with them. How dense are we trying to pack this tiny little area of Standale? We've already got, and I listed out to the city council last week, just the sheer massive number of apartments that we already have in a small 1.5 mile stretch of Lake Michigan Drive. Now we're talking about putting 250 apartments and 68 family homes into a tiny little area. Why? Why do we need to have that many apartments and that many houses? I don't want, we don't need, there's no need for us to cram that many more people into this tiny little area. Let's make the lots bigger, the apartments bigger, the homes a little nicer, so that we have more stability and a nice neighborhood and a nice area to live in. There's no need to make it this dense. Street connections. Actually, okay. I think one of the earlier plans, one of the earliest plans, had a separation, and this is essentially what I'm proposing, because I think this is one of the earliest designs, a separation between the single-family home section and the apartments, okay, where that does not connect through. The single-family homes could connect north to Leonard from Maple Row and Custer. The apartments could go to Lake Michigan Drive and connect to Maple Row out to Kinney. That way each section has two connections, and you're splitting up between the single-family homes and the apartments. I know I've heard statements about emergency services wanting direct access from Lake Michigan Drive, but I think I speak on behalf of every single person in here from my neighborhood that if it takes the fire truck or ambulance one more minute to get to the rare occurrence of emergency we have in our neighborhoods, we would much rather have them take that one extra minute than to have upwards of 300 to 400 cars traveling on Maple Row every single day. Okay? I don't think that's a big ask. I think that's very feasible.
Your time's just about up.
Okay, so I'll try to wrap it up as this. I know the builder says that he wants to get started right away, and I don't blame him. If I was a builder, I would want to get started right away too, and I would want to maximize the number of built structures within there to maximize my profit as well too. But we don't need, this project should not start at all, not one bit of dirt pushed, until you have a consensus of people that live in the neighborhoods to the north and to the west, because there's still a lot of disagreement and a lot of unhappiness about how this is going to be going through. So I guess with that, I'll yield my time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chad Van Dam. I live at 847 Anita, which is on the northeast corner of development. I think I can echo what everyone has already said. My first concern would be with what Bill said with drainage. I moved into my house 7 years ago, and I've had drainage issues the entire time I've lived there. I've contacted the city of Walker numerous times. I've had them over 2 times, and they've done completely shoddy work. I've ended up spending thousands of dollars out of pocket to regrade my yard, only to be told that that's just the way that the neighborhood was developed. My second, and I think my most important, most concerning on my half, is I'm a sergeant with Grand Rapids Police Department. I've lived in Walker, like I said, for approximately 11 years now. In the last 4-day stretch between Colville and the city of Grand Rapids and Wilson and Lake Michigan Drive, there's been 14 accidents. 2 of which are personal injury accidents, 1 of which was involving my wife and my son. To add 300 more structures into this area is going to go crazy with the traffic. How you guys plan to mitigate that is beyond me. The second issue is I've been a police officer for 14 years now. I've worked in 2 different departments, 2 different cities. It doesn't matter how well you build your apartment complexes, the trouble is still going to find its way in. I think the safety of the Lincoln Lawns residents, as well as my neighborhood and the residents of the city of Grand Rapids to the east, is definitely going to be jeopardized by that number of apartments that are going in here. I'd like you all to take that into consideration before deciding on this plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Don Van Wilde. I live at 641 Lincoln Lawns Drive. Apparently, we have 2 completely separate entities here. We have the multifamily and we have the single family. My question is, as I understand it, the single family areas are all going to be sold. Am I correct about that? They're going to actually be sold to someone else. So we have a site plan here that shows us what's supposed to happen in that area. But supposing the new owner decides that he doesn't like it that way, does he have to adhere to this site plan that I'm looking at now? He would? Okay. So all the layouts, the pocket parks and everything, he has to do that. That's all I'm interested in. And the one other thing is the infrastructure, the wiring, the plumbing, the sewer and all those things, does that go into this whole entire area at the same time?
Sure.
Kind of.
Kind of.
The apartments and the main road, most of that would go in all at once. It's yet to be determined how much would go in for the commercial area or the single-family area. So there'd be a big chunk that would go in early on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's maybe a little ambitious to think that it could start in October because we haven't reviewed any final plans or, permitting or any of that kind of stuff.
I understand. Thank you for the answer.
Kim Hauptman, 529 Fairway Drive, and we've been a resident there over 20 years. First off, I want to say how disillusioned I am at how this whole thing has been going. I've spoke at these a number of times. I think you hear us in public comments, but I don't think you listen. Just the discussion among yourselves about the connectivity on Maple Row versus Custer tells me you're not even together. And I find that to be a difficult thing when I pay taxes to live in this area. My big thing is the connectivity. I know it's necessary from your standpoint, not the residents, for emergency services and maintenance services. We have the fire station located right on Lake Michigan Drive. It can get into that development easily. It's less than a mile away, straight shot down Lake Michigan. Police, we don't have to worry about being close to a police department because they're out on patrol. We don't have to worry about somebody coming from Remembrance to the neighborhood. I think it's ironic that you're more concerned about the length of a driveway for the multifamilies being at least 25 feet when you're trying to connect streets that are only 21 to 26 feet. Seems a little off to me. I also do not think the Lincoln Lawns to Sunset Hills connectivity is necessary. I think it's going to create more problems than solve problems, and we've already talked about that because of the hill there, and people have the tendency to pull out into the left turn lanes and wait to move over, which is what MDOT told us about 15 years ago at a public meeting that was at Lincoln Lawns. So I hope this time somebody is going to listen and not just hear.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Essenberg. I live on Sunrise Lane, 2 houses from the Marlboro connection. And I have a couple of questions. Originally, when I talked to you, you talked about a green space behind our houses. My backyard is going to be connected to these single families. And I understood, I think I talked to Tricia, and I understood that the green space, our trees, would be saved. And I want to know if that's still the case with this new plan. Because I have quite a few large trees on my property, and I would like to keep those. Can anyone answer that?
Developers indicated that those would be retained.
Okay.
Now, bearing in mind that some of them are older already, but that is the intent.
Okay, well, that was one of my questions. And then the other thing, can you clarify if these single units, are they actually single unit homes or are they going to be condos? would those be considered single homes? I don't know.
They would be single-family homes
Okay,
with ownership of the whole lot and the home.
okay, thank you. And then one other thing, the drainage in my backyard goes right through my backyard. Is that something that's going to be dug up? Do you know?
From what you've seen?
No,
do you
we
have
don't know
any-
yet.
Okay,
Well, obviously, they can't trespass into somebody else's backyard, but they're gonna have to provide for drainage on their own development. Those final details are all part of the storm sewer design, contours, and things like that we don't have yet.
and as Tricia pointed out early in the presentation, there'll be a final area site plan, and that's where that type of detail would be more evident.
Okay. And then back to the gentleman that's a police officer. I know that these parks are popular with young people, and I'm glad. And I wonder who's going to monitor those, and when vandalism happens, how is that going to be cleaned up, and who is going to take care of that? Something to consider, because we don't want our neighborhood. We're kind of a Leave It to Beaver kind of neighborhood right now, and we kind of like to keep that safety factor. And my last thing, I am against the Maple Row tree being cut down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Benjamin at 3674 Sunrise Lane. I live right adjacent to where the stub road is and where the big oak tree is. I guess I've been following and coming to these meetings, but I am somewhat disappointed in agreement with what Tom Biles said and Patrick Laurie, that the last meeting I was at with the workshop was with the Planning Commission and the City Commission, and the way I left it, to my knowledge, was that it was approved with the multi-connectivity of Maple Row and Cootser, and also with the Marlboro. So to come to today's meeting, I guess I was somewhat shocked and really disappointed that all of a sudden, from what we heard at the last meeting, it's now been changed. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael Cochran, 869 Maple Row. I'm just going to echo what a lot of other people have said, and I don't have anything new to add, I don't think, other than, every time the new plan comes back, it seems to have less and less of the input from the residents that has been provided to this commission and to the city commission. It just continues to increase the density. I mean, looking at this plan with that connection to Maple Row, which is still opposed by the residents of the neighborhood, you take out that connection to Kuster, you've got a straight shot up, a little jog to the left and right. That is going to be, whether it's people coming from south or north, there's going to be a big increase in traffic, and it's really going to change the character of the neighborhood in a way that can't be undone once it's done. So, I don't think this is the right plan. I think we can do better than this. I know that there's a financial reason to want to move ahead as quickly as possible, but the people in the surrounding neighborhoods are not on board with this, and we're going to be subjected to probably, 4 or 5 years of ongoing construction right in our backyards. And, I hope that we can work together to find a plan that works better for everybody and fits everybody's needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Ed Kowalski. I live at 3608 Sunrise. I agree with the last gentleman that seems like the more input that the residents put in, the less the plan shows any of our input. I'm at 3608, so pretty much that spine road that comes up right where the turn is, my backyard now is going to be where all those headlights shine. That's my living room. So I went from a sleepy golf course and to now it looks like every night I'm going to have Koval's worth of traffic going through my backyard. I know it's easy to set up there and be like, it's not that big a deal. It's tax dollars coming in. I get it. Originally, there was a proposal to connect Maple Row to Cooster. And I thought that was a pretty good idea. Safety, I get it. Fire trucks coming in. But connecting to Lake Michigan Drive, I think, is a poor idea. There's no sidewalks on Maple Row as you get north of our new development. It's a bad idea, and I really urge you guys to stop the connection to Maple Row to Lake Michigan Drive through their spine road. I'm not opposed to the rest of the development as sets. It's only in the single family. I think you guys need to take a deep look at that. I'm sorry about your tree, but I'm not opposed to the connection back there. I just don't want to see it go to Lake Michigan Drive. I think that's the wrong answer. I've been really impressed with how Walker handles themselves. Their police department is excellent. The city council's been great to work with. So far, it's yet to be seen on how the developer is truly a good neighbor, but I hope you guys really think about this tonight before you approve any connection on a through road. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion to, it looks like the public hearing is, public comment is ended.
I'll make that motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Tyler,
Support.
supported by Pat to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. It's for our conversation now. We've gotten good comments from the public all the way through. We've got the recommendations before us and from the staff. And Joe, you want to begin the conversation?
Well, I thought from the beginning, Tricia did a very good job reminding us this has been going on for a long time. This isn't, and I think we do listen. If you're out there, we certainly listened. So I don't think that's a good argument. We may not do what you want, and each time a different thing is made, the other group complains. So it's sort of a ping pong game, but we listen. And I don't like that argument. We don't listen. We may not do what you want, but we certainly listen. I don't think anybody sitting here tonight can say we didn't listen.
Pat?
Yeah. Just for public, I live in this neighborhood, so I'm well aware of all the neighbors, and the issues that are in front of us. I'm trying as a commissioner to do the best for the people, the city, the developer, and trying to make it so that, a developer who bought the land, owns the land, can do whatever he wants with it as long as he follows the city procedures. And that's what we're trying to make sure he does, and he has. We don't want this in our backyard. But you know what? My development, the people on Maple Row and Sunset Hills didn't want our development, and they opposed that, yet it went in. They got tons of traffic. So I understand the whole traffic issue, and the connectivity. I'm still pushing for the Cooster connectivity. That is something that will alleviate some of the traffic on Maple Row. We also talked about traffic calming on Maple Row with some four-way stops and things like that. So I think that can be done, in the future once we get this thing moving. I'm also, if Cooster doesn't get through, or we agree that it doesn't, I want to take the connection from Midland Court and close that off on the spine so that the multifamily homes can't have quicker access to Maple Row. But that's just my own opinion, and I'm just making that fact. The rest of it, I think the developer's done a really good job. I think, again, he has listened to us, and he's responded. He's been patient. There's a lot of money being wasted on that land right now. And so we appreciate his flexibility and his patience. So we do listen to you, but we also have to follow the procedures that the government, allows us to do. So we've done some things, and I agree. The first proposal was to connect Maple Row and Cooster and not connect to the Spine Road coming through. But then that was opposed by the city commission, not by this commission, but the city commission. So then we went back and we've done some other things. So that's kind of where we're at today. And we appreciate all your attendance to these meetings. That really shows your interest and your love of your properties. So I do appreciate that because I do live in the area. And so I've talked to a few of you, on the street every so often. So that's kind of my comments.
Thanks, Pat.
And I'll echo everything that Joe and Pat have said already. We thank you all for coming out here. It does show that you care, and we certainly do listen to everybody's input. This plan we are bound to follow the master plan of the city of Walker, and this plan, by and large, does that. And not everybody is going to be happy with the way things play out, but we are duty bound to follow the master plan, and as is the developer. So as this plays out, things are moving as they should. And so, without repeating a lot of what Joe and Pat said, that's kind of where I stand.
Can I add one thing, Terry, before Tyler? Talking about the drainage, sorry. I have terrible drainage in my backyard, so I can feel for all of you out there that has drainage. The developer has worked with his engineering to make sure that we don't get it any worse. He can't solve our problems, but he can make sure that it doesn't increase ours. So I wanted to make sure that you guys understand that. It's not like he's going to come in your backyard and go, okay, take the drain out. I can't mow my lawn for like the first month of the spring because of all the water in it. And it comes from your guys' yards down to the very end corner and then out. So I could blame all of you, but it's one of those things. It's Mother Nature. So, but I hope that when he does take care of the course behind my house, that I'll get less water because it does drain through our properties. So if he levels that all out and does things like his engineer is going to do, so I think there will be an improvement, at least on the north end. I don't know about the Lincoln Lawns part, but I'm sure it's not going to get any worse. So, sorry. Sorry, Tyler.
First of all, if I make a motion, Cooster will go through. That's what we decided at that meeting, and I'll put it in my motion. Then the rest you can vote it down if you want. Second, a young man came up and complained that he only gets 3 minutes. This plan has been going for 2 years. There has been multiple meetings. There's been neighborhood meetings. It's been posted on the website. So to complain that you only get 3 minutes is not quite accurate. Nope, this is my 3 minutes. Complaining you only get 3 minutes is not quite accurate. You've had plenty of time to do it.
I've been mobilized with the National Guard for the better part of the last 18 months, so there's my excuse to help this community.
Where were you when we redid the master plan 3 years ago? Anyway. So anyway, Cooster is going to go through. I think we are bound by the master plan. We worked through 3 years, almost 3 years to get the master plan done. There was multiple input from the whole city of Walker on that, and this is what it was master planned for. So we are kind of bound. I agree with Pat. We are kind of bound on what we got to do here. We want to make sure that it fits. And the Lincoln Lawns area, when it was developed, the neighbors probably didn't want it because they had field behind them. So development is hard. We have a job to do. And if you guys want to do our job, you can apply online to be a commissioner. It's most of the time it's enjoyable. But then you get into situations like this where we're never going to please everybody. In fact, if I took a poll, I would guess the whole neighborhood would say we don't want the development here. But we can't follow that. We have to follow the rules. It's hard. People don't like you. So it fits into the master plan, and I think the developer has made some really good choices in what they've done to try to alleviate some things. That's it.
Thanks, Tyler. And this is, I guess, repeating perhaps some things I said at our last meeting when we looked at the rezoning. There's a lot of different viewpoints that we've heard and taken into account. We've talked about it in our meetings as far as what the impacts would be and what the solutions may be, and no solution's going to address all the issues. But we, as was mentioned, we do the best we can to take a look at what the plans are for the community, what the allowances are for development, and somehow come up with a decision in this case on whether or not this preliminary plan is acceptable. And again, I think that in terms of the information that was been provided to the developer, in terms of modifying the plan to meet what's been expressed by both the Planning and the City Commission, I feel that they've been responsive to that. And in terms of what the staff has provided us, they've really went into the detail to try to address all the issues and not leave something not covered. So I think they've had a thorough job, a very tremendous job of putting this together and trying to make it understandable and get the type of input that we need in order to make our decisions. By and large, the plan that's submitted, I feel, is our best effort in order to be responsive to all the concerns, both in terms of the master plan as well as comments offered by the community. And I'm generally in agreement with the recommendations of staff. I think that the consideration of Kuster is as much a matter of timing. I believe the recommendation to wait on that particular section is perhaps a common sense of looking at it in terms of if you're going to have additional cars go down through there and you want to accommodate for pedestrian movement, just as you would on Maple Row. Maple Row is in a better circumstance to do that. That straight shot that Kuster represents versus Maple Row. Maple Row has some lines to it that I think helps to moderate the traffic through there. And sidewalk improvements, I think, is going to be really important going forward as this area would develop. And I wanted to also mention one other thing is in terms of the recommendation that we've looked at in the past and what's coming forward is that as this area develops, it sounds like the multifamily would come first. And we talked about this a lot in terms of concerned about not having real easy connections in with those with a connection to Maple Row and or Kuster. And that's one of the reasons why Market Street, instead of having a T intersection and connecting with Marlboro, that connection was taken a little bit further to the south. Again, we're trying to, as this goes in first, the people that live in this area, get them in the habit of just turning to go to Lake Michigan Drive to go where they're going to go. And the same thing as they come home. And as the single family is subsequently built, those connections that would be required as part of the development, those connections would be the very last thing that happens. So Maple Row and Kuster would not be, as they went through their construction phase, you wouldn't see construction traffic coming down through there. That'd be all funneled through the multifamily area, not only in that phase, but also in subsequent phases. So you wouldn't see the construction traffic coming north onto Maple Row or Kuster. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but I feel that the project as submitted warrants favorable consideration. Mark?
I'll be short. I don't think I can add. I think everything's been said pretty well. I do believe the project matches the master plan. I do believe that the developer has been very cooperative in trying to balance his needs with the needs of the community. And as far as the connection to Cooster, I would be in favor of that. At a minimum, making sure that that can be done in the future. So.
Well, I'll be brief as well, because I really can't add much more than what's been said, although I'm a firm believer in connectivity. I've seen it throughout the years in my career. I've seen it in other areas in Walker. If you don't build Cooster now, it'll never get built. It'll get really expensive. So I'm in full agree. I mean, the developer's done a nice job, I think. The property's going to get developed. If I would say if you don't want to develop it, you can buy it. He'd probably put it up for sale at this point, but so I'm in favor of the project with the Cooster connection.
Okay. Any other comments or questions, or we've got a...
Well, I liked what Terry said about Cooster. That seems to be kind of I think we're all kind of in favor of most things, but maybe see what happens a little bit and leave our options open. Isn't that what you sort of said on Cooster?
I believe that's...
Our engineering department has some concerns about it, and you drive down there, I can see what you're talking about, the pictures she showed. So maybe leave our options open on that and go ahead with some of these other things?
Well, I think that's what condition number 5 is recommending.
Okay.
With that, entertain a motion.
Case number 20-875, motions for Waterford Village CPUD, RPUD1, and RPUD2 preliminary site plan review. I make a motion to approve the preliminary site plan review for the Waterford Village development consisting of 250 multifamily units, 68 single-family units, and 5 commercial outlots and associated roads, utilities, and other infrastructure and off-site improvements located at 3483 and 3485 Lake Michigan Drive Northwest. Per the RPUD2, RPUD1, and CPUD plan sets last revised dated 8/16/2021, subject to the following conditions and finding. Condition 1, the applicant shall address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated August 25th, 2021. Number 2, the applicant shall work with the city assessor for all necessary land divisions and boundary changes consistent with the zoning exhibit dated 7/9/21. Number 3, the applicant shall identify areas for the addition of specific equipment and improvements related to active recreational amenities within the RPUD1 and RPUD2 development areas and just be discussed in final area site plan review for approval or denial. Number 4, the applicant shall identify all wetland areas to be preserved on the preliminary site plan as either conservation easement dedicated to the Michigan DNR or preservation easement. Easement documents must be reviewed by the city attorney and recorded at the applicant's expense. The applicant shall provide the city with a recorded copy of said easements. Number 5, the applicant shall revise the preliminary area site plan to make the connection to Cooster Avenue. Number 7, skipping number 6, a development agreement shall be drafted by the city attorney that outlines the developer's responsibility as it pertains to utility costs, right-of-way dedication and acquisitions, easements, timing of road construction, and off-site road improvements prior to the approval of any final area site plan. The agreement shall be recorded in final form. Number 7, each application submission for a final area site plan review within the Waterford Village development shall also include a deposit of $2,000 to fund an escrow to cover costs incurred by the city. Number 8, any party applying for final area site plan of the RPUD1 project area shall follow all required application procedures for subdivision approval per Chapter 74 subdivisions or Article 11 site condominium projects of the Walker City Code of Ordinances. Number 9, any party applying for final area site plan of the CPUD project area shall follow the application procedure as provided in sections 94-213. And number 10, during final area site plan review process for each outlot within the CPUD and both development areas for RPUD1 and RPUD2, the applicant shall provide a zero impact statement as it relates to stormwater containment within the project area. This shall be provided prior to any issuance of building permits for said project area. Findings of fact per section 94-213 3G. The proposed development does conform to the city's general development plan. Number 2, the proposed development does conform to the intent and to all regulations and standards of this article and of this chapter as applicable. Number 3, the proposed development will be adequately served by public facilities and services such as highways, streets, police and fire protection, drainage courses, water and sanitary sewer facilities, refuse disposal, or that the persons or agents responsible for the proposed development will be able to provide in a manner acceptable to the Planning Commission any such facilities and services. Number 4, the common open space, any other common properties, individual properties, and all other elements of the PUD are so planned that they will achieve a unified open and recreational area system with open space and all other elements in appropriate locations, suitably related to each other, the site and the surrounding land. Number 5, the location of the proposed uses, layouts of the site, and its relation to streets given access to it will be such that traffic to, from, and within the site and assembly of persons in connection therewith will not be hazardous or inconvenient to the project or the surrounding area. In applying this standard, the Planning Commission shall consider, among other things, convenient routes for pedestrian traffic, particularly of children, relationship of the proposed project to main thoroughfares and street intersections, and the general character and intensity of the existing and potential development of the surrounding area. Number 6, the mix of housing unit types and densities and the mix of residential and non-residential uses will be acceptable in terms of convenience, privacy, compatibility, and similar measures. Number 7, the Planning Commission shall determine that noise, odor, light, or other external effect from any source whatsoever which is connected with the proposal will not adversely affect adjacent and neighboring land or uses. Number 8, streets do follow topography, are properly spaced, and are located and aligned in accordance with the intended function of each street. The property will have adequate access to public streets. The plans do provide for logical extensions of public streets and shall provide suitable street connections to adjacent parcels where applicable. Number 9, major pedestrian circulation will be provided for within the site and will interconnect all residential areas, community areas, and commercial and other services where applicable. The pedestrian system will provide a logical extension of the pedestrian ways from outside the site and will provide pedestrian connections to the edges of the site where applicable, where appropriate. Number 10, where a project is proposed for construction in phases, planning and designing will be such that upon completion, each phase shall be capable of standing on its own in terms of the presence of services, facilities, and open spaces, and will contain the necessary components to ensure protection of natural resources and the health, safety, and welfare of the users of the planned unit development and the residents of the surrounding area.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, motion by Tyler, supported by Joe to pass the motion as offered.
Real quick, do we need to, the developer had the question, I just want to make sure it was in Tyler's, about the pocket park down the one main road. Do we want to, I mean, I kind of agree with that I mean, we can work with staff on that. I mean, just make sure
I would say that they work with staff on that one.
Okay.
And
seems logical we want to maintain the trees, but it might be not logical for.
This is preliminary as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
this-
that's what
that would be addressed at the final areas site plan.
Yeah, the condition says that the applicant shall identify areas for the addition of specific equipment and improvements related to the active recreational amenities. So, I think I would agree.
Okay.
So, is there support for the motion?
Joe
Joe,
already
you did. Okay. Now we're ready for the vote. Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We're going to be moving on to the next project. This is case number 21-026, site plan review.
Last time I said that, nobody, but everybody went with that.
I would be, Tom.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
5 minutes or less.
Okay, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes.
4 minutes till 8. Yes. Hey, I didn't mean to get in an argument with the guy, but are we supposed to stop development because he's gone 18 months?
Yeah, I know.
And I wanted to get Kuster in there because we said at our meeting, it's now or never.
Yep.
So let's just do it.
Well, and that's why we have a vote.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Wow, this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? It has taken us how many years to get to this point?
Yeah.
You take an aerial view.
Yeah.
You got friends by the tree?
Right on that.
Yeah. Well, that's influx of, what, I don't know what their student population is, but I think it's been around at least 20,000 in the past.
I would say a lot, a good proportion of those are apartments.
Yeah.
Or something related.
And you'll be able to get out in that light.
Yeah, I didn't know what that guy's comment was about.
Oh.
Did he say, I misheard?
Well, he said that he didn't feel like there was enough time afforded to him to be able to say everything. And Tyler made the comment. So,
Understand.
I anticipated it being a little bit more rambunctious than that, and so the purpose was to let everybody speak, and then you would have your items and that.
all right. Again, the next item on the agenda is case number 21-026, site plan review and stormwater variance requests for Booth Joppy's Ice Cream Company. Tricia, if you could introduce the project.
Thanks, Terry. So one thing I would like to know, how do you pronounce the second name? Booth Jops? Joppies?
Joppies. I've heard it multiple ways, and I have not heard it from the owner, so I cannot answer that.
Okay, fair enough.
When I was a kid growing up, the Joppy dairy truck came to the house and they put the milk bottles in the little house. And it was, my mother always said it was Joppy's Dairy. So
Okay.
I'm sticking with it. Sounds good.
Okay, so this project is proposed at 2627 Elmridge Drive Northwest. The parcel is approximately 1.64 acres, and it's zoned MH, heavy industry. And the future land use designation and community character designation of this site is enterprise, and it's within the Northwest Neighborhood Cluster. General location of this site is on the west side of Elmridge Drive, just south of the Elmridge Drive 3 Mile Road intersection. And we have Matt Cole of Rosine and Associates with us tonight to represent the property owner, Brian Lawrence, and the applicant is Jamie Smith of Wolverine Building Group. And tonight, the action being requested by the Planning Commission is to review the site plan for a 6,334 square foot building expansion and stormwater variance request, and to grant approval with or without conditions, tabling, or denial of the requests. So these are the existing conditions for the site. It was owned by a company or a nonprofit that did that had a printing press, and they distributed Bible tracts. And so they're no longer occupying that building, and it's my understanding that Booth Dairy took over the property within the last year or so. And so they'd like to make some expansions to the building, two separate little expansions here. And the proposed improvements include one 5,854 square foot addition off the west end of the existing building, and then another 480 square foot addition of the south side of the existing building. They're proposing some storm infrastructure, but they are requesting a variance, which Scott will address a little bit further and along with the applicant. New sidewalks surrounding the front and south side of the building. They'll be adding a dumpster area with an enclosure, 3 loading areas, 19 parking spaces, and just a little bit of additional landscaping. So here's the site plan. This is the first proposed addition, the 5,854 square foot addition. And the second one is right here. And the first plan that was submitted showed only this one drive entrance, and it was apparent that truck turning movements would be pretty tight in here. And so what we asked for them to do is to add this northern driveway to be able to have a little bit more maneuverability. And in doing that, it's this driveway here is kind of taking up a lot of space where we would normally put somebody on the hook for adding some landscaping requirements that complies with our zoning ordinance. But the addition of the trees out front here is more than what it has right now. So staff is satisfied with that. I should mention this is a super straightforward request, and staff doesn't really have any issues with the site as proposed. One thing that I should put out there that I mentioned in my staff report is that we typically would require sidewalk in some of these infill areas where it appears that it might be a sidewalk to nowhere, but this is our opportunity to jump on requiring the sidewalk. But in this case, it's a little bit different. As I understand it, there's some history with when the City Commission approved the improvements to Elmridge Drive when it was redone. And so they agreed on sidewalk only on that eastern side of Elmridge. So we're asking them to put sidewalks through these drive approaches, but not along their entire frontage. And so I'm recommending that the Planning Commission grant the approval of the site plan for the 6,334 total square foot expansion of the existing building and related site improvements to 2627 Elmridge Drive for Booth Joppy's Ice Cream per the plan set. Last revision dated 8/17/2021, subject to the condition that the applicant addresses all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated 8/24/2021.
Thank you, Tricia. Commissioners, any questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Scott?
You know, maybe before I get started, that the sidewalk issue, this is extremely unique. This is the only street that I know of in the whole city where the city commission has gotten into this level of detail and given a directive. So the directive, after many public meetings and debate, was to just put sidewalk on the one side of that street. So this is kind of a legit deal. Okay. So with my report, a couple simple items. The northernmost driveway there, we want to make sure those curb radii are a little bit bigger. That's a very, very tight entrance, even for a passenger car, so those should be a minimum of 20 feet. We want to make sure the sewer and water services are shown on the plan. The big item for us is related to the truck turning movements in the back. So the new building addition back there really changes the accessibility of the 18-foot and 12-foot overhead doors in the back. And we asked for some truck turning templates because we knew it was going to be tight. And the one template that was shown was just the exit movement on the easiest bay, which we see a lot, right? I mean, people show that on there and they think, oh, we're good. But we were pretty smart and we kind of looked at it, how'd that van get in there? So one thing that we would recommend, and we did at site plan review, is that the parking spots in front of the dumpster not be shown and not be used for parking. That helps with the truck turning movements, we think, and that certainly helps with the dumpster. So that, and perhaps pushing that area and that parking bay a little bit further west might give them enough room to make those templates work. But when we're approving an addition like this, we should make sure that it fits, and they should come up with a reasonable size box truck and show that they're able to enter that safely. The last thing is related to stormwater. Part of the site is existing. We do not have a grandfather clause in our stormwater ordinance, so when you make a major change to a site, you need to come into compliance. Part of the mystery here is there's a very obvious large pond to the southwest of the site. It's obviously been providing some detention in the past, although informally. So what they've done is they've added a considerable amount of stormwater detention here, and then run a calculation that shows that they would still be utilizing a small portion of the pond with a potential of 1 inch in height change, which is pretty insignificant. And they went ahead and looked at the adjacent buildings around the pond to prove that that was safe. Now it's their job to convince you of the stormwater variance, but I think it's a reasonable request. And I would ask that you ask them to make that presentation to you. That's it for me.
Pat?
So I was at the site. Is there any reason for us to require, on that back corner there, if you go off the back edge of that blacktop, you go down a steep hill, I could see a truck trailer getting a little bit, especially in the wintertime. Do we require anything safety-wise, like guardrails or anything back there?
It would be a building inspection related issue. If they see a steep wall over 30 inches, they require either a guardrail or a railing on
Or
that.
a curb or something, because you look down there, it's a good 50, 60 feet down into that pond.
Right, and when you're squeezing things in and trying to make trucks fit in there that maybe don't fit too, those are all issues for you to consider.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions?
Where is the semi going to deliver to? Oh, sorry. Where is the semi going to deliver to?
So the semi truck is, for the deliveries, is the truck docks. That's that concrete tongue that sticks out. So if you can flip to I think it was like the third or fourth sheet in the plans. I think it was the third. It shows that by adding that driveway to the north that staff requested, you can get a truck to come in and pull up to the north and then back into that. So that's for, that's going to be a recessed truck dock, so they can deliver into that new addition. And then they still have the grade door in the front, and then they'll have the 2 grade doors in the rear.
So what trucks are going to use the rear?
So what they have for their trucks that they use for fairs or whatever the case may be, all they are, they're like a F-250. So it's just a big pickup truck. So, and I appreciate that staff, wanted to see the truck. So I didn't have a 250. The closest I had was a passenger car, but I wanted to err on the side of caution. So I put a 40-foot box truck, which they don't use, and it was way bigger than they needed. And I showed that in the back. And the reason I picked the north door is because that door is only 12 feet wide, and the southerly one is 18 feet wide, to show that it would still make it. So, if you think about it, a 250 pickup truck, if it was, some people still drive those and park them in a parking lot, and those aisleways are usually 24 feet wide. So this is 36. So we're confident that there's plenty of room back there.
Well, I know where their current operation is.
Yeah.
So I know what trucks they're using. I also drove by there Saturday morning when a semi was trying to deliver to the place, and I don't think that driver could hit this dock. That's a whole nother story. That truck is coming from the wrong direction. Elm Ridge the truck route ends at the next curve. So how is that semi's coming from the wrong direction to use that driveway, I think. But
okay, I wasn't aware of that, so that's my bad. So I just showed that the semi truck could get in and back in on site, not from the road.
They should be able to hit that driveway with a semi.
Yeah.
He's going to pull past it and back in. He's not going to. Well, he can't come in not legally, he can't come in from the south, so.
Yeah, but yeah, the semi-truck traffic would stay in the front into that dock. In the back is all the 250 traffic.
I'm happy.
And then to talk to the discussion about that steep slope, it is a steep slope, and that's why we have a 6-inch curb all along that radius there to help be just kind of a factor of safety for that reason. So even though curb and gutter is not required, we're adding it in this instance.
So, Scott, you were recommending you take out the dumpster and the parking spaces there, but he's using a too big a truck for the template. So now do we leave those parking spaces in?
I'd want to see it. My recommendation is to see it, whether it's a 250, F-250 or not, to show how it enters the site. Because you have to pull in and back up. And I think it would be short-sighted for us to recommend, a site where somebody's got to navigate themselves around corners in reverse. So I'd want to make sure they could pull in head first and then back into those bays. The movement that's shown there is the exit movement, which is very easy.
And so then also just to touch how it's going to work. So we have we're showing I think 2, what are those called? Where they're the engine heaters on a post. So the owner had asked for 21 parking spaces on the site. And I think we had 20 originally, and then when we had to add that driveway to the north, we lost one, so now we're down to 19. So the thought is those spaces in the back wouldn't be for employees, they'd be for the company vehicles. So when they go out, you're going to have some empty spots back there. So again, the thinking is, we understand that if there is a problem, it's an operational problem, okay, then they'll tell people don't park there, and that's how we could alleviate it. But they're under the impression that this will work in this way, with it being striped, they could get 2 extra trucks there.
Okay, so that may be something that needs to be worked out, and given the level of detail we have here, it may be preferable, as we would take action on this, is to leave it for staff to work with the developer on how that would be accomplished.
Yeah, and we're fine with that. We'll make sure that Scott's happy.
I just want to make sure there's a template. I don't want to be endorsing a new site that doesn't work. I mean, that's one of our main callings is that kind of safety. Booth Jobs has probably done one or two of these in their lifetime. We've done about 1,000, so we want to make sure we provide that leadership.
Yeah, and same thing would hold true for just making sure that a semi-tractor trailer could get into the site, have that reviewed by staff and resolved at that level.
Yeah, and I think you're happy on that, correct, Scott? It's just now the vehicle's in the back.
Yeah, I realize, like Tom said, that the traffic for the big trucks at least is going to come from the north, but there's a lot of area to work with there. What we don't want is any backing up off of Elm Ridge, because it's a road with two curves in it. It's not the kind of place we want to have trucks sitting out in the road unsuspecting as someone comes around a corner. We want to make sure that they can make those movements on site.
Now, is there anything else that you wanted to offer in your presentation?
No, I think that's it. Like I said, I think we can work with Scott to make him happy with whatever needs to be done.
Okay. Now, this is not advertised as a public hearing, but if we have somebody out in the audience that has a question about this, concern? No takers? Okay.
Joe doesn't have a concern about truck control?
So, any deliberation, motion?
Well, if Scott doesn't want a semi to back in off Elm Ridge, I don't know how they're gonna get a semi to that dock without backing in off the street. They pull past the driveway and back in.
Well, it's a totally fair thing for you to ask that template be redirected, and they'll have to make adjustments to the site to show that that can work. It's not just Scott wants kind of a thing, right? I mean, this is.
Well, no, you stated.
I'm here to help.
You stated very clearly that the city does not want backing in off the street, and I don't see how that can be done. Because they certainly aren't gonna be able to get in the north driveway and pull in. I don't think it'll work.
I think in the last plan revision, when that north driveway was added, our thought was that the trucks would come in that driveway. Now, what they brought to us is much, much smaller than that.
Okay.
So it may be that they have to reconfigure that again. And part of the issue was we told them we don't typically, for a site like this, they wouldn't have two driveways. But working with Gary Postma from Public Works and we said, for this kind of a use, to make that work on your site, we're okay with giving you that second driveway. So the second driveway's there, but it's not really being used for what we thought it was going to be used for.
I make a motion for case 21-026, Booth Jobs Ice Cream, 2627 Elm Ridge Drive Northwest, site plan review. I make a motion to approve the site plan for the 6334 square foot expansion of the existing building and related site improvements at 2627 Elm Ridge Drive Northwest for Booth Jobs Ice Cream Company, per the plan set last revision date 8/17/2021, subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated 8/24/2021, and the applicant will work with city engineer on truck turning templates and parking spaces in the back by the dumpster.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Pat, supported by Joe, to grant conditional approval. Comments, questions?
Staff comfortable with that?
Yes.
Namely you, Scott?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the applicant working with Scott. And so the stormwater variance, that should be a separate motion, correct?
Yeah, just be it known that there may be some adjustments, minor adjustments to this parking layout to make that work.
Okay, looks like we're ready for motion. Motion's been made, we're ready to vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Stormwater variance. This is your opportunity to make a pitch on that.
There you go. Okay. So what we're doing is we're adding probably about just under a quarter acre of impervious area to this site, and that comes out to 2,700 cubic feet of storage required just for that. But as Scott mentioned, we're supposed to bring the entire site into compliance. So what we did is I talked to the owner and I said, obviously, I said we can go two routes. One, we go ahead and we put in some oversized pipe underground, or two, we go ahead and cut into that already steep bank and try and expand that water there. And so we agreed, we didn't think we want to touch that bank. Let's put some pipe underground. So we're going with some 60-inch pipe. We ran pretty much every section except for around the addition where there was pipe. We oversized that to get as much storage as we could. Unfortunately, we're not able to get the full 10,000 cubic feet that we need. We did get double what additional runoff will come off the site, but we're not hitting that 10,000 cubic feet number. Now, as Scott alluded, we do have a pond right adjacent to this site where currently everything's sheet flowing into that has been taking the water from the site up till now. And it seems like it would be reasonable to say, well, the water's been going there now, can we use some of that storage? Granted, we're going to reduce the water that's going there, but we'll still have some of the water go there. And ultimately, that's where we're outletting, you know, our 60-inch pipes down that hill and into that pond. And so, and that's where we ran the numbers to show that that pond, I think, is about a 1.3 acre. I didn't look at that stub to the south, just looked at that north stub, and the water that we would have that would flow into there will only raise that water level by about an inch. And currently, that raises it probably by 1.5 inches or so. So it'll impact it less. The system that we're proposing will handle all the first flush water, so the water will, you know, have time to settle out, and we'll be improving the water quality that leaves the site. We're just unable, because, you know, the building's there now, and we want to keep working and keeping what we can of that building to meet the full 10,000 cubic feet.
Wanted to clarify, so right now it's a sheet flow of that water to get to the pond?
Yes, yep, the sheet flows off and right down that bank and into the water. So now we'll catch it, collect it, we'll have the water quality, and then we'll release it down that bank. We've got an overflow spillway with some riprap to help keep everything stable and not have any issues.
Okay. Comments on that?
Does this pond system have an outlet?
We had kind of asked that question. There's not a lot of good records on it. We did look back too. I believe it was part of a industrial plat, but this lot was not included in that plat, so we couldn't take any formal credit for any detention in there. It's just been kind of a historical thing.
It does have, it drains to the southeast.
But there's no modeling that's been done or anything like that, other than the fact that you ran a volume calculation to determine the impact, and it was less than an inch, I believe, right?
Correct, yep. And like I said, we'll have less water going in there. I mean, obviously with more impervious area, more water will be routed through it, but we'll have less storage occurring in there.
All right. Any other discussion on this?
Well, I have to admit that last statement wasn't real convincing, that you said you're going to have, forget what you said, but it didn't make sense to me.
So, I mean, if anyone adds a patio to their house, you're going to have more water that runs off the minute you increase any impervious surface. So what I'm saying is, because of the addition we're doing, we're increasing the impervious surface, and so you're going to have more water leave, but we're detaining it on site because these are loam soils, they're not sandy, so we can't infiltrate it into the groundwater.
So you're holding it with a larger pipe?
But we're holding it with a larger pipe.
Got it.
And then we're releasing it with, I think it's like a 3/4 inch hole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now it was a convincing
Okay.
All right. Does anyone ready to offer a motion.
Tyler did the big long one. You got to give the guy a break.
Yeah, why do I always have to do the long ones? Motion for case 21-026 Booth Hops Ice Cream, 2627 Elmers Drive Northwest, site plan review. I make a motion to approve the, since this isn't written, I make a motion to approve the stormwater variance as the applicant has submitted.
Do we have support? Okay.
Well, what do you want me to do?
Motion by Tyler, supported by Mark to conditionally approve it, or approve it as submitted. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Didn't bring any samples. No, unfortunately, I'm not that.
Hey, Scott, who
Maybe
owns,
when you apply for the building permit.
who owns that fiber optics thing right
Have a good
right on the
night.
side of this building?
I heard AT&T mentioned during site plan review, but I'm not positive about that.
Gotcha.
All right, the last item on the agenda, well, second last item, public hearing, case number 21-025, final area site plan review of a gas station, C-store, and drive-through restaurant at Walker View IPUD. And Tricia, if you could please introduce that.
Thanks, Terry. So we have the final area site plan review, as you mentioned, for J&H Oil Family Stores, for the gas station, C-store, and drive-through restaurant. And this property is located at 2352 Northridge Drive Northwest, and it's lot C6 of the Walker View CPUD. The lot size is approximately 2.46 acres, and it's zone CPUD. It's within the Northwest Neighborhood Cluster, and the future land use designation is Enterprise. And it's on the southeast corner of Northridge Drive and Walker Avenue. And we have Joe Grudchwalski. How did I do? And Lauren Hoppin, the property owner, or the prospective property owner? Craig. Oh, Craig. Okay, I'm sorry. And so the action requested by the Planning Commission tonight is to review the final area site plan for the gas station, convenience store, and drive-through restaurant within the Walker View CPUD, and to grant approval with or without conditions, tabling, or denial of the request. So just a little bit of background. You probably remember at your January 6th meeting from this year, the developers came to you, and this was a Zoom meeting. So if you were trying to picture yourself in this room, we were all in the computer. It was like one of our first Zoom meetings, I think, maybe. I just remember being in my basement at that time. So we've got the Walker View planned unit development. You've got FedEx, Kent County Road Commission in here. The Pico site is in there too, and we have Falk Panel, Flexco. So that's all in the industrial area. And then over here on the western end of the PUD, you have the commercial lots. And so at that time, at the time that it was originally approved, the commercial lots were slated only for C3 uses. I think the idea of a gas station was tossed around at the time of original approval, but at the time they didn't want to open up the door to all C4 uses. And so also, it was a different time back then in terms of how much development had taken place in the area. So quite a bit of time has passed since its original approval in 2015. So they came to you for a an amendment to allow just gas stations, but not all C4 uses for lots, only lots C6 and C8. So I'm going to back up again. So we've got lot C6 right here and then C8 right here, which is actually 3 parcels within that particular lot. So taking a closer look at this corner, you've got Northridge Drive here. Here's the Holiday Inn existing. This is Grand Rapids Ophthalmology and the Walker Surgical Center. And then you have Faith United Church here, and they all have access off Walker View. And the original, back in the day, I had to do a lot of research on this. Obviously, this was before my time. But when this PASP was approved, it was, the understanding was that most of the access to these commercial sites would be through internal service roads. And so at the time, the expectation was there for when folks come in for final area site plan to get those cross-access agreements and easements in place. So these commercial lots kind of sat for a little while. And we met with the developer and the folks who own these parcels, which also own this space here. And they were not open to any cross-access easements through these parcels so that this site could get traffic coming through and access from Walker View Court. So we're still working with the applicant and trying to get around that. And this is an image, probably should have been in an earlier slide, but this just shows you, this is the subject site, and you have the Meyer gas station here, and you have the Fruit Ridge Citgo here, which is relatively new. And so when you allowed for the amendment to the PUD to allow for gas stations, these were some things that you took into consideration, that both of those gas stations are pretty jam-packed pretty much all the time. And so at the time that you approved the amendment, you all agreed that this would be a good time to approve that use on this site. Oh, let me back up here. So they're proposing all your typical gas station amenities. They've got 5 double-sided pump stations underneath the fueling canopy. They've got the convenience store, which is the majority of the space, and then a portion of that would be a drive-through, either restaurant or coffee type establishment, which they don't have determined yet. So they're proposing several stacking spaces. They're adding sidewalks along Northridge. They are showing a internal service road connection to the Holiday Inn parcel to the east, which is sort of per the original plan. They're proposing some outdoor display and sales areas like you'd see at a typical gas station with your propane and salt and windshield wiper fluid. 43 total parking spaces, and this includes parking at the pumps. They're proposing stormwater management facilities, landscaping, lighting. They're also proposing the air compressor and vacuuming station. And then they've got 2 double-sided diesel fuel pumps under a separate canopy. They've got box truck parking, loading zone for deliveries. And this is a rendering of the building elevation. I think a lot of the newer stores look a lot like this. And so just going back to that access piece, where the original PASP kind of was under the impression that there would be access, and there's even curb cuts onto this Walker View Court for what would be cross access to get over to this parcel. But again, these guys weren't really all that interested in providing those easements at this time. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't set the stage for some future connections. So in the design of this site, these guys aren't excited about it now, but this property could change hands, or these guys might have a change of heart down the road, and we feel that it's important to at least set the stage for those connections. So the site as it's designed, let me go back to, sorry. The site as it's designed shows a curb cut here onto Walker, which is kind of a compromise because we didn't really want any curb cuts onto Walker. It's pretty close to this intersection, not super crazy about it, but you know, we're willing to work with them on this. But we would like to see some connections, maybe to this area here, so that there could be cross access through this parcel. And we don't really know if these parcels, the three of them, would get developed separately, if somebody would buy all three and develop the whole thing. You know, I think at one time J&H Oil was interested in buying this whole entire, both lots to develop this gas station. But again, it wasn't in the cards. We've got this cross access here, which is good. But, you know, we would like to see these connections on the plan, and that was not provided as requested. And then the other big thing here with this site plan is that the use, when the PASP was originally designed, there was some extensive traffic studies that were conducted to ensure that you know, that the impact wouldn't be horrible on those surrounding intersections. And so for this particular use, it was not one that was taken into consideration during that time. And so a condition of approval from when this PASP was approved is that the individual commercial FASP applicants provide an updated traffic impact analysis. And so in working with the applicant, we said, you know, we don't know if we necessarily need a whole traffic impact analysis, you know, like one of those. But at the very least, we'd like to see some traffic counts and just an examination of what the level of service is at the surrounding intersections. The applicant provided some sort of comparison information from some other sites, but as we know, all communities are different. All sites are apples to oranges, and so it's really not all that useful in comparing it to this site, especially since we have such a high volume of traffic that's added onto our roads from all of the additional industrial development that's going on right now. And so and one of the other things is, you know, sometimes this happens, and I think Scott's going to go into this a little bit. We've got this curb cut that's spilling onto this parcel, which you probably remember from the Kent County Road Commission, FASP. They had to get permission from the FedEx folks to be able to allow their approach to spill out onto the neighbor's right-of-way. So that's one thing that we would need from them if this driveway is gonna work. So in just going back to my little presentation here, we are recommending at this time that the Planning Commission table their action on the request for final area site plan approval. Based on the findings that the plan dated 8/18/2021 lacks an indication of future cross-access connection, and to and across Lot C8, addressed as 3325 and 3311 Walker View Drive and 3352 Walker Avenue. A traffic impact analysis was not conducted as requested. At minimum, staff recommends traffic counts and level of service of nearby intersections are examined with findings provided to staff. And Scott's going to go into this in a little bit more detail, but the plan proposed stormwater management design for the site that is not quite meeting our standards in terms of the 100-year calculations. So we all agree that this is a great use. We feel that a gas station at this site is going to be something that really is needed in this area, again, with all the additional traffic. But we only have one chance to really get this right. And since there's so many other unknowns with parcels that are undeveloped yet, we want to make sure that this site is set up for success and for connectivity in the future. And that's it for me.
Any comments or questions for Tricia? One thing that, looking through your report that kind of jumped out at me was that when the other approvals, say for the Holiday Inn, was given, it didn't require a cross-access easement at the time that they, as a condition of the approval. And it's hindsight, but had we imposed that then, we'd be in a better position right now. I guess with that in mind, that with what you've raised as far as the lack of a cross-access, not only showing that, but also acknowledging that by showing that there is a pledge to provide cross-access to whatever goes in on that adjacent property. So aside from that, any other comments on that? All right, we'll turn it over to Scott Connors, city engineer.
So first item in our report is cross-access, that connection to the Holiday Inn that was partially built with the Holiday Inn. They built it to their property line just like we'd have any other developer do. We want to make sure that that easement's in place. If the Holiday Inn Express did not put an easement on that, I would be very surprised, especially because it's so pronounced.
Yeah.
If that didn't happen, and if you look back 20, 25 years in our history, there's a lot of these that are, people say they'll put an easement in, they show it on the plan, but that's a whole different thing than to record an easement, bring it downtown. A lot of those never got recorded, so we would have to backtrack on that and make sure that gets taken care of. There's also sidewalks shown within that cross-access driveway. We would certainly want to move that outside of the driveway and put it up on the top of the curb at a minimum. And there's also a consumer's energy easement in that northeast corner. I know because I was ordered out there in a rainstorm once to look at some light poles that were put up in the easement by Holiday Inn Express, and they demanded that if we ever let that happen again, we're going to be in big trouble. And I don't know what that big trouble is, but I don't want that to happen. So we want to make sure that easement's shown back on there unless it's been rescinded, which is a possibility, but I don't think it has been. Also, outdoor displays have been added to the plan since site plan review. The stuff that's shown along the front sidewalk, we wouldn't want to have that allowed on there from an engineering perspective because you're already going to have people parking up, overlapping that, and we want to make sure that you've got at least 5 feet of free space for people to walk through there, people with any kind of disabilities or maybe people that are just getting a little older like me. Want to make sure that's preserved. One interesting note you'll see on the plan, you may have caught, is that it says it's in the city of Grand Rapids. I just wanted to let you know that it's okay. You know, we do have that 425 agreement with Grand Rapids, so that for taxing purposes, this is in the city of Grand Rapids, but that doesn't mean that anything changes. Police, fire, building permits, all the reviews, all that is still done by Walker and considered part of Walker. And if you had representatives from both communities here, they'd probably arm wrestle to say whose community it is, because it's just part of a 425 agreement that helped us with some brownfield funding. The next comment talks about the box trucks in the area. What we've noticed with the two most recent gas stations along this industrial corridor is that they are, as Tricia said, they're really, really busy. But it's not just that they're busy with a lot of industrial traffic. And if it's not a box truck or a semi, it's somebody pulling a trailer with landscaping equipment or something like that. Both of these new facilities, I think we learned some lessons on. And although this is a pretty big site, when you look at the traffic circulation and the fact that the trucks can only go one way around the building, it's pretty important to make sure that's preserved, because if that breaks down, those larger trucks that are going to use the gas bays or the fuel bays on the south side, they won't be able to navigate that. So it's just something for you to think about when looking at ample parking. And added a snapshot image of the Meyer station. When I took this picture, it was FedEx trucks. An hour later, it might have been all Amazon trucks. An hour later, it could have been bigger trucks. You've all seen this, I'm sure. It's quite busy. And the driveway along Walker Avenue has been a big point of concern even before these folks came in. The property to the south, the Dreamscapes property, was part of the original plan for Walkerview. I don't think that everyone has been playing nice since that point. And when we were talking about cross-access and reducing driveways in critical spots like this, the intention was that they would be shared off of Walkerview Court there, and then with cross-access further to the north, so that we didn't end up with driveways inside of turn lanes like we're going to have here. Unfortunately, the people that own that property to the south have now said they don't want anything to do with this development. They don't want to work together. So that presents some problems. And what's resulting here is that you've got a driveway that's shown inside of that right turn lane. It is shown as right in, right out. But if you look at the dimensions, they've requested such a wide throat for that south leg to be able to get the WB67 trucks, which are the biggest trucks they make. To be able to get those in there, it's 30 feet wide. And so somebody coming from the other side of the road, they're not going to hesitate to jump into that and just turn left across the traffic, which is what we're trying to prohibit. So we're going to recommend there be a do not enter sign on that island, and then also that the island be adjusted so that it has more of a sharp edge to the south to prohibit that. And one of the biggest concerns we get about these right in, right outs is that we're not working hard enough to have it work like a right in, right out, because people are still cutting across traffic. And with that wide throat, this also needs to have a little bit extra attention there. Tricia mentioned the stormwater. I think what happened originally was they couldn't get all the water from this site to go north into the dedicated detention pond on across the street, across Northridge. So they looked at the storm sewer in Walker Avenue, and they just ran a calculation to see how much capacity was left, and they wanted to use all that capacity up. And we said there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you have to do before you can do that. They have since sent us a new stormwater calculation, and they've said that they will be able to achieve all the parameters from our stormwater ordinance. We haven't gone through that in detail, but I think what you can take from that is that they're not requesting a variance, and they need to come into full compliance when they get their stormwater permit. So that issue, we can kind of put a check in that box, and then it'll be left to staff to ensure that that's indeed the case. And then the last issue for us, the two or several pipes that go into that stormwater pond, they're all kind of right on top of each other, so to speak. What we call that is a short circuit. So if all the pipes are kind of touching, then the inlet and the outlet, there's no cleaning that takes place of that water. There's no processing. It just goes out of one pipe and into the next pipe. So we want those to be separated so that the water does use all of the bottom of that pond for the grass buffering and things to slow the water down, take contaminants out, and that kind of stuff. And that is it for us.
Scott, your knowledge of that stuff overwhelms me. I'm just overwhelmed how much you know of all this stuff. Gosh, yeah. You've been there before, haven't you?
But Scott doesn't practice medicine either. So.
Yeah.
At least not that I know of.
Joe scares me a little bit when he says he believes me. So.
Yeah, I don't agree with Joe on that one.
All right, any comments or questions for Scott relating to the technical detail? Okay. Applicant, want to come forward in any presentation you would wish to make?
Stretch out first. Big crowd here for this one tonight. So, my name's Joe Grotchwalski. I'm with Omega Architects, and we're the architect for J&H for probably the last 12 or 15 years. And so we've been through a lot of these too on these sites. Here with Craig Hoppen, the owner of J&H, and Don Vandenberg. He's head construction guy for J&H right now. And what I'd like to do is just kind of go through. Of course, we're here tonight. We'd like to get approval. We'd like to not get tabled if we can help it. So some of the things that we did, like Scott mentioned in the end, we had a pond, and we didn't have some of the piping coming in the pond properly for first flush and things like that. And a bunch of these things can be handled pretty quickly, okay? And that's one of them. One of the things we found out kind of moving along in this project is that, again, like Tricia said, there was not a plan to access Walker. And you can tell that by the fact that the driveway that we're coming in off from Walker is at a 739 grade, and the storm pipe that goes across Northridge into the storm pond on the north side of Northridge is at like a 745 grade, okay? So there's quite a bit of difference there. So the water on the southwest part of our site was never intended, that was never intended to be as low as we are. This whole site was probably intended to be 4 or 5 feet higher on the building pad than where we are right now. We think we have a really good flow through this site. We've angled the pumps so it's easy to get in and out, whether you're coming in off from Walker and leaving on Northridge, or coming in off from Northridge and leaving on Walker. I want to kind of just keep on track here, so if I bore you a little bit, Tricia and Scott both laid out a number of points, and I want to kind of go through them to begin with. In the end, Tricia had the 3 points, and one of them, we feel like the 100-year storm and the stormwater pond would take care of that. That's pretty much taken care of. Feenster's already gone through. I think there was a typo. They had listed it as a 25-year storm design, but it actually, when they upped it to a 100-year storm design, our pond was still able to take the water. We didn't change the size of the pond. It was 16,000 cubic feet. So at 25 years, it was 11,000 required. And at 100 years, it was 16,000 required, and that's what we had in the pond. So that's why that pond came about, is because we need to store the water and slowly release it into the Walker drain, which isn't really big, but we were able to do that, and Feenster's run all the calculations. Craig is here, and he'll talk to some of the things that he's already been here before. So this is my first time in front of you on this project, handling the construction end of it. First thing is, the access to the cul-de-sac. We're perfectly fine with showing an access to the cul-de-sac. We kind of laid it out, and when we couldn't get it from the neighbor, we took it off the plan. So we can put that back on the plan. We have no problem with accessing off the cul-de-sac for the J&H. Let's see. So, yeah, and Craig will talk to the fact that of the conversations he's had with the neighbors about different things. One of those conversations had to do with moving our driveway off from Walker farther to the south, basically including their property in on the drive access. So we could come drive farther off the south, get away from the intersection, possibly get a left turn out of there, a south turn out of that drive. But again, that didn't go anywhere with the neighbors either. So what we have right now is right turn in, and we will be doing everything that Scott says about the island and reconforming and putting in the do not enter sign and everything. But we're taking traffic off from Walker, right turn in, and we're dumping the traffic back out on Walker, right turn out. So we're taking in northbound traffic and we're sending back out northbound traffic. And that's one of the things that we did is we had a site a while back and we had a traffic study that was just up in the clouds as far as the number of cars they were telling us we were going to have at our site. So what we did was we actually went to the sites, some of our biggest sites, like 44th and Clyde Park, that has 9 double-sided pumps in it. And we took traffic counts to just come up with the fact that we have like 1.5 cars per minute. And the traffic people were telling us we were going to have like 2 or 3 times that many cars, but the actual counts were different. And they had Tim Hortons restaurant, drive-up restaurant, and this is, 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning. And so, well, what I'm saying is, this site, as far as traffic, the site's not a destination. We're taking people off from Northridge and taking people off from Walker that are already there, okay? They're basically going to the businesses and things like that, okay? There's not going to be people that are going to be jumping on the road just to run out to our gas station typically. We're taking drive-by traffic, okay? Our gas station's there. It's not going to change the drive-by on Northridge or the drive-by on Walker. And again, we're not changing Walker. We're taking northbound traffic and keeping it northbound. So, let's see here. So we can take care of most of these things. That stub, we will work with the neighbor and try to get a letter out of the neighbor that lets us use the area in their right-of-way in front of their property there, okay? We'll try to get that from them. We weren't able to get some of the other concessions from them. We'll get that. If we don't get that, we'll have to work on reworking that driveway and moving it north and figuring out what that impacts. I also did call Tim Hogsma from the Kent County Road Commission to see if they had if the Kent County Road Commission had done any traffic studies of any of the intersections in this area. And he told me no, they don't have anything that they've done. And we are in the process of contacting Wade Trim and Progressive A&E, their traffic people, to basically do what Tricia asked us to do too. So we're not opposed to that, but we don't think it's going to tell us a lot about our site, okay, getting those counts, but we will do it. And let's see. We took care of the 100-year storm pond, and that's it.
Joe?
Yes.
I think you kind of nailed that. On that easement, and I'm the one, and Tricia was on the phone too, and I really thought we had given our neighbors a lot of good options on even swapping some square footage on properties and stuff to make it work better for everybody, but they didn't see the sense in doing that. We'd obviously like to see that cross access. I think it makes good sense for what we're trying to do and for whoever would buy their piece. And I think if you look at what's left of their piece, the third piece, you couldn't even build a silo on it. If you had all your setbacks, that third piece is like worthless. So, I mean, I thought it was a really good deal, but they really turned us down pretty cold. On the stormwater you already hit, the traffic study, can you guys give us some specific guidelines of what you'd like to see? I mean, I'd love to do a traffic study that would tell you that I can have a right in, a left in, a center out in either direction, but I don't think that's going to happen. But can you tell us exactly? Are you just looking for traffic counts? Because I don't see with a right in and a right out, we're not going to temper traffic at all. So I'm not sure what a traffic study would show or what exactly you guys are looking for.
This was yours.
Scott, I think if you wanted to take this one, since you're more,
Well, I've been off on the periphery of this issue, but I guess to me, like southbound traffic using the gas station, it will have an impact. Even though it's passed by traffic, you can't turn left in off Walker Avenue, so you need to use the left turn lane to get to Northridge, and then when you go back out to go southbound, you need to go back to Northridge, use the left turn again. Those are the kind of impacts. What's the level of service impact that you're going to have on the existing infrastructure? That's a pretty simple way to look at the traffic study from my perspective.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't also, I mean, being next to the highway, you're gonna get a lot of traffic coming off the highway to gas up on their way to Grand Haven, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, that's where most of the traffic's gonna jump off and either go to the Meyer station or your station. And that's just gonna add a lot of traffic on that intersection.
yeah, I think it depends on if you're going west on the highway, you're probably gonna go over here. But if you're going east, you're probably gonna stop at the Meyer, because you just want to take a right when you get off the exit ramp.
And we can do that. I mean, what, I guess if I could ask one thing is if we could pass tonight upon a traffic study. I think we've all been up and down this road enough times that there's a traffic study will tell us what's going to be there, and it might even tell us how to time the turning signals at that intersection. But the traffic on this side of the highway is relatively light. Even with all the new businesses there, there's not a lot of traffic there. And that's, to be honest with you, that's why we passed on this site a couple of times, and it was for sale for a long time before we bought it. It's just not, the traffic isn't really there yet. I'm just speaking very candidly, but I don't think a traffic study, other than maybe timing your turn signals, is going to tell us anything.
At this point, we're not going to put staff on the line as far as determining whether or not to table or not. That's a decision that's left up to the commission to make. So it sounds like you've been going down the line and addressing each one of those comments there. Anything additional to add?
No, I think Scott mentioned a couple of different easements. The consumer power easement, we'll get that shown back on there. I honestly don't know where that went to. And sometimes that with computers, that's a layer or something like that that didn't get turned, that got turned off and didn't get turned back on. And the other easement that we have to do is to the Holiday Inn there too. So, and we'll get Feenstra to write that up too.
So I think it's acknowledged that there's some detail here that they're asking for that isn't on the plan right now.
Yes.
And I think we'll talk about how that might affect whether or not we want to take action this evening or table.
Yeah, and I'm saying to you that most of those items we're perfectly fine with providing them. If you did vote to pass us and turned it over to staff and said with their approval, we're good with that too. We're not ready to start next week on this project, but we would like to get to know that we've got a project.
Yeah,
so.
and I think we understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, even getting stuff ordered now, you order it now and it might not be here for 6-8 months from now, so every day counts. And I think, like Joe said, we're not asking for any variances of any kind, and we're perfectly willing to work with staff too. So I appreciate your time tonight and your consideration.
All right, thank you. Now, this is a public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Anybody here in the audience that would want to speak to this project? Okay.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay. Motion and supported by Tyler and then supported by Scott to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. Where are we at on this one?
Part of me struggles a little bit about a traffic study because this is a very small parcel of a originally very large project. I don't think the property was intended to be vacant back then. A little more intense use than a hotel probably, but I think when all these buildings that Visser Brothers is building right now, when they open up, I think you're going to have plenty of customers.
Any other comments? Or if no comments, anybody offer?
I struggle with I'm still struggling with the right in, right out entrance in the deceleration lane. That was never meant to be like that, and that, I don't know why I can't get over that. So,
Well, I will give you my observation after using Bigsby's on Alpine on Sunday when it's buy one, get one free. It doesn't matter what signs are up. If they can cross the traffic lanes, they go for it. They don't care whether there's an island there or not. So when it's busy, they can't make the turn. But yeah, a little bit of an issue there with the right turn lane. That just adds another lane to the. So I would make at least, if you're gonna restrict it, at least make it so when the semi pulls in, he's got something less than a 6-inch head curb to drive over. But
I think that on one hand, the applicant has said that they'll be willing to work with staff on working these things out, but on the other hand, there's also a recognition that you've got a portion of that curb opening is in front of another property. They acknowledge that they have to talk to the adjacent property owners to work that out, as well as for the conversations about cross-access. So from my standpoint, they just don't have it complete yet tonight. They know what they need to do, and I think that's been made clear from staff and with the comments that they've provided. And it looks like I would think that the motion to table is warranted. It would provide that time for them to get those details put on the plan on there, work out some of those question marks with respect to the cross-access and as far as the drive location itself. So that, I think it's a good recommendation from staff on this.
I would agree with that as well, Terry.
thus I will make a motion. Case number 21-025, J&H Oil Gas Station and Drive-Through Restaurant, 2352 Northridge Drive Northwest, Lot C6, Walkerview CPUD, that we table based on the following findings. The plan dated 8/18 lacks an indication of a future cross-access connection to and across Lot C8, addresses 3325 and 3311 Walkerview Drive and 3352 Walker Avenue. Proposed stormwater management design for the site is inadequate. I don't know where that leaves us on the traffic study.
I think that they've had some conversation as far as how they might address that. And
Okay, then
if they need more direction, they can still talk to staff.
They should talk to staff regarding a future traffic study, and then the adjustments that have been discussed need to be made on the plan so that we can see a final area site plan.
I'll support that.
Okay, a motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to table action as detailed. Any questions?
I guess my only comment would be there must be a traffic study for the whole Walker Ridge site and maybe use that as a base to see how your facility is going to differ.
They said that you guys never required one. They don't have one.
I'm sorry, who doesn't have one?
Rockford Construction never did one when they put the development in.
Well, I find that hard to believe.
Are you talking about a different one, Tom?
I'm talking about the Walker Ridge site.
You mean Walker View?
Walker View, sorry.
Walker View, yeah.
Well, if there's something on file, they'll be able to locate that and have that conversation.
The road commission did not do any traffic studies.
Shame on them.
Well, they relied on the developer doing it for
We might have to pull their permits in the morning.
whose permits? The road commission's permits?
Okay, I think we'll call the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Sorry it was so late.
I understand. By the way, you guys did a good job of handling the crowd.
There was no fist fights at least.
There was no, you should have been here for the previous two meetings. This was calm and quiet.
Well, I'm just saying you did it very professionally.
I live at 3944 Marlboro, so I'm on the other side, other side of the power lines. And my younger sister used to face the 7th fairway. So she moved about 15 years ago, so.
All right.
That's funny.
Thank you. Okay, we've got the zoning ordinance update discussion. Tricia.
I'm going to make that brief. So basically, I included in I created a little, just a one-pager memo, basically just describing that we haven't done this in a long time. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
And so it's time. Talked this over with the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they had really, they were in support of doing this, but it's likely going to take a budget amendment, and so not totally sure where we're at with that. Frank's kind of handling that. But what we would do is we would have the city attorney kind of comb through what we have now and identify any areas that are contradicting other areas or ones that might be inconsistent with some of the state statutes. I mean, we're already aware of some of them that have, the state statute doesn't exist anymore, it's been repealed, but we still have a reference to it in our ordinance. So stuff like that, we'll have the city attorney comb through. And then once we find all of those items, we'll then work with our planning consultants at McKenna to see where we can add some of those amendments that were recommended in the master plan to ease with the implementation of a lot of the different character areas within the master plan. And it's not super user friendly, and so we want to make it so there's language that's understandable and also easy to move around. Right now, it's just, I still don't understand why there's supplementary district regulations, and it's like, I don't know, way far down. It should be like chapter 3 or section 3 or something like that. So anyways, that's what the goal is of this whole project. It'll probably take a really long time. Lots of meetings with with our consultants, ordinance committee. The Zoning Board of Appeals suggested forming a subcommittee with members of the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. So if you're interested in serving on a subcommittee, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just pick one.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Just kidding.
That 3 minutes is up.
Well, that's all I have to say.
Suffice to say that if we, as planning commissioners, have any suggestions, to forward them to you?
Absolutely. That's why I thought it was a good suggestion to have a sort of a subcommittee, a couple members from each of the public bodies, because, there's a lot of different eyes on our ordinance, and as many eyes as we can have as possible would be helpful in finding some of these areas that, when you read it, you're like, I don't know what I just read. That doesn't make any sense. I'm sure Tyler could find a whole bunch of those. So, yes.
All right, so bottom line is, they're going to be doing that work. If you want to be on the subcommittee, contact Tricia. If you got any suggestions. One that we talked about a few months ago was to require that pass-by lane on drive-up windows. So just remember.
That's a good one.
We brought that to the ordinance committee a while back, but it never went anywhere.
So
Dan Power has a couple of pages of necessary ordinance amendments.
Yep.
And, you know, just a lot of simple things that you guys don't necessarily see, but it's like secondary front yards and the height of fences and stuff like that, where people are going to the zoning board of appeals, and we're kind of like, can we just amend the ordinance so that we don't have, you know, because let's look at the intent and why is this ordinance here? So, yeah.
Okay, very good. Any other business?
What's going on with the hotel behind the Meyer gas station? Anything? I see
Nothing.
started.
No, they haven't done anything yet. They recently gave us 3 sets of plans that were revised for construction. Basically just the plans that incorporate all the conditions of approval. So, yeah, that's where they haven't applied for any permits yet.
Because that's really gonna change that landscape back there once they start digging that hill and stuff.
Yep.
Speaking of gas stations, the one on Wilson by Leonard, that's gotta be coming up for extension.
So yeah, at this point, if they wanted to continue with their, you know, the actual construction of this, they'd have to come back to you guys for an extension. But we also have some other gas station folks that I've been meeting with who are not currently in Michigan, and so they want to bring their business to this market. And so they're thinking about potentially seeing what's up with that site and maybe doing some negotiation with the owner, because AGO still owns the site. But they're also interested in putting a gas station on the other corner, the opposite corner, over on the Lewis Farms
Oh, that front,
thing.
the commercial part of Lewis Farms.
It's mixed use PUD, so the zoning isn't there, but so they'd have to finagle something if they really wanted to do something there.
I'm leaving.
Motion to adjourn.
Finally. Good job tonight.
You missed one gas station, the Marathon there on 3 Mile and Fruit Ridge.